I saw you got the Olivier Connecticut.
I did because, I like the Oliviers. I like the Connecticut, so I got the Reserve in the fancy
It's good.
container. And
I don't remember
also,
if I smoked that here or if I was smoking it somewhere else.
My other go-to is a Macanito Cafe. So this is a Macanito Cafe Hampton Court in the fancy
In the
sleeve.
fancy. I think we've talked about the sleeves or the cellophane versus that. I really like the sleeve. I think it does like if you're taking it from the store to your humidor, there doesn't seem to be a huge drop off in taste. Mm-hmm. I also do prefer cellophane over open though.
Yeah.
I'm smoking the Perdermo Habano. It's a Connecticut, one of their Connecticut's. I like it. It's one of my favorites.
This one ought to go fast.
Yeah, it's thin.
Yeah.
So this might be the worst week
I feel for you.
my sports team.
I feel for you.
I mean, I was thinking about
I
this.
should have sent you a condolences text. I sent a couple of my friends some condolences text.
I mean, we really haven't talked about basketball all that much on the podcast. As you can see, I'm wearing my True Blue Duke fan shirt that I got from a family friend that went to North Carolina to visit Duke. She picked me up a shirt, but man, like I was trying to think last night like of the most disappointing things that has ever happened to me in sports. So like outside, like professional sports. So watching the Rangers lose in 11 and watching Dirk lose, I guess in that same time frame.
1-11, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
06.
Lost in 06. That was heartbreaking for me. Because it was the first time like my sports team that I was an adult was going to realize, okay, they're going to win.
Yeah.
Also, I think I still hate Dwayne Wade. I still have sports hate for Dwayne Wade.
That's what I mean. So I was talking to somebody and they're like, man, I just feel so bad for Josh. I'm not going to change the subject. We can jump back to NBA. But they're like, I feel so bad for Josh Allen. I'm like, you know what? I do too. But I still have sports hate for the Bills just because we beat them. Like, and I know it's kind of the reverse.
So this is a little different for me.
Yeah. It's kind of the reverse on Dwayne Wade. But even if, I guess my point I'm trying to make as a side note here is, even if we beat the team in a championship, I don't like that team.
Yeah, I don't know,
Back
man.
to the NBA though.
I just like I was trying to compare something that a non-basketball person would understand. The only thing I could compare is like if you were to take Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL.
And trading for Dak Prescott.
And well, but AD's better than Dak. So like it would be like you're taking him and trading him for
Jalen Hurts.
Well, no, but Jalen. Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe another tier down. You literally took the best player in the NBA, the best player. I mean, say what you want about him. Okay, he drove me crazy as a fan, but he's my guy.
Yeah,
he's my guy. He was picked by the Mavericks on a fantastic trade that they made on draft day that not very many people would have taken. They did their research to succeed Dirk.
Yeah,
and that's too like I feel like it's a betrayal of Dirk. And that's part of where I'm getting like seriously, Clint. I teared up this morning on the way to work. They were talking about it on the radio, and I'm like, I'm so upset about this. I think I went through all 47 stages of grief at one time yesterday.
Yeah.
And then again this morning, and then I was listening to him talk about it on the way here, and it just there's no okay, maybe he doesn't play defense. Everybody knows that. Like, we've known that since the day he was drafted. He doesn't play defense. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you build around that. Okay, maybe he's gained a little weight and he's had some conditioning issues. Hey, I'm gonna ask us both a question. If somebody offers you $359 million for 5 years, you think you're going to work out a little bit more? I think our both of our faces said it's so, like, I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense. I smoked 3 cigars yesterday.
From what I hear, the people who are getting to the acceptance part of the stages of grief.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm hearing a lot of, okay, fine, if you wanted to move on from Luka, fine, but the trade still sucks. Like what you got for him is not comparable to what you could have gotten, and that you didn't offer him to other teams, because I think other teams stepped up and said, we would have given you everything for Luka. And you could have gotten more.
Yep.
But apparently Nico has a relationship with the GM at the Lakers.
Pelinka.
Again, I don't understand any of this because I don't follow the NBA. But apparently there's that relationship, so that's getting looked at with some side eye. And the only way this works out, and then actually it doesn't, but I'm hearing the only way this works out is if Luka just stays fat and out of shape and hurt, and a few years from now he's not the same player, and a few years after that he's sitting on a couch. If that happens, I don't think it's going to, and I don't even follow basketball that well, but if that happens, then it's still not okay because of what they could have got for him anyway.
But still, he's my guy.
His value, yeah.
He's my guy. And my brother-in-law texted me, so he's going to be – I'm stealing your point. Like, we win with our guy or we lose with our guy. And, like, I kind of feel that way about Dak. Now, Dak is not on Luka's level, right? I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to have somebody, we may as well be the guy we drafted, okay? That's kind of a bad analogy, but it's the only one that I can really come up with because it's like, at least we're going to win or lose with our guy.
Here's the flip side to that, to not having that attitude, is the Cleveland Browns, who've had 28 different quarterbacks in the last 12 years or whatever. Like, that's the flip side to not winning or not trying and not trying to do it with your guy if you just keep changing horses. So that's the complete opposite.
I'm so upset. Like, I don't know how long it'll take me to get over this. Like, I'm not being sarcastic either. Like, I love sports and I love basketball and I love the Mavericks so much, so much that, like, it's almost unhealthy. Like, I'm not that fan that is like over the top. I mean, I do, but I love watching it. I love watching it. And I feel like I'm kind of one of the few that actually still does love watching it. And so when something like this happens, it's so hard. Like, it's not going to be fun for me for a little while. Cause I'm not an AD fan either. That's another part of it.
That stings.
So, you know, there were a lot of Luka jerseys in the school today.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I saw 7.
Not in the trash.
Well, did you see they held a funeral for him underneath Dirk's statue?
I saw the memorial, but I didn't know they held a funeral for him. That's intense. Well, he just bought a house a month or two ago.
$15 million.
House. So, yeah, he didn't know. AD didn't know.
No, and they said that house that he bought would be valued at $50 million in L.A. And, like, the other thing is, too, is he lost $100 million going to the Lakers.
Taxes.
Because I don't know. No, the Supermax contracts. I know you don't follow the NBA, but because he was drafted by the Mavericks, he can get the early bird rights, which has something to do with Larry Bird. I don't exactly understand how that works, but since he was drafted by the Mavericks, he can get an early extension, which would have been coming up this summer.
Okay. Which
would have taken his value to $369 million for 5 to 7 years, depending on that. So now he can only re-sign for $259 million.
I mean,
to us, that's a big deal.
So did they just not extend him early?
They could have. It was being reported that they were going to sign him to the extension before.
I mean, they'd made a decision they weren't going to extend him.
I mean, that's what it appears like.
They felt like this was the value they could get, and everyone else feels like they're wrong.
I can't find one person on the internet that's like, this is a great trade.
No. Lakers fans probably like it.
Well, of course. But even like some Lakers fans are coming out saying, like, who's going to be the point guard, because both him and LeBron need the ball in their hand.
Yeah.
They're very ball dominant players. Yeah. And so how do you do that? Like, it hasn't worked so far with him playing against a very ball dominant player. And the Mavericks are still going to be fine. Like, this year, next year, they should be okay. But like, it's not my guy.
So does that mean AD is now the best player on the Mavericks?
No. I mean, maybe, arguably. Yes, my initial response is no, but
because you don't like him.
Because no, I just don't. he's not Luka.
Yeah, Luka's not here. So like,
Yeah, so
I mean, who else is there?
so you have him, Kyrie Irving, huge
Kyrie,
fan. That's
yeah.
still my Duke guy. You have Derek Lively, who's hurt. You have PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Spencer Dinwiddie, Max Prosper. I mean, there's some depth there. You have Jaden Hardy, this Christie kid they got. He's a pretty good player too.
But here's the thing. So to me, AD is better than Kleba, right?
100%.
So there's a little bit of I'm thinking about this like an accountant, right?
Okay.
So
I need you to talk me off the cliff.
Markieff and
Morris,
then the one that we got,
Christie.
Christie, are they similar?
No, Christie's way better. So Christie,
AD and Christie are way better than Luka and
no, because Luke. So if you're talking about the second people,
they're way better.
The second, yeah. So Luka's better
than AD
and AD, but the other like Maxi Kleba and Marquise Morris is not better than Christie.
Kleba's not better than Christie?
No.
I don't know.
Not at all.
Because I'm trying to figure out why, like, a 2029 first-round pick.
Yeah, and that has something to do with the ability to maintain that. So also kind of what, if you really want to dive deep in this Mavericks also have what's called a trade exception that they can use this year only when they traded off either Porzingis or Brunson. I can't remember. And it's $16 million. Well, since this is way more in depth than I was planning on getting, but when AD signed the extension kicker, which removes, like, it pays it, if he gets traded, he would have he gets an additional $10 million. Luka is not foregoing that signing bonus, quote unquote, for the remainder of the year. AD did. So now the Mavericks have an additional $6 to $10 million in that, and also a $16 million trade exception that doesn't go against the cap, which will put them under the first tax threshold.
And I saw AD did some kind of restructuring or didn't take something to keep him under.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And it's team friendly, so now they can maybe go after one other guy, which leaves there is another roster spot open because they traded 3 for 2. And so there is one more spot, but that's when they bought that Kelly guy in. Mm-hmm. And he's not good. He's one of those G League two-way guys that you were talking about last week.
Okay.
So I don't know. It'll take me a long time to get over it. I just now forgave Nelson Cruz for dropping the ball in 2011. So,
your sports hate is long lived.
My sports hate is long lived. And like, I think I felt this way also when Dez caught it. Like, I feel this in my core.
Felt cheated.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, I only got to see him play live twice. And I feel like this is like when the only other thing I can think of is like Jordan's like, hey, I want to come out of retirement. And the Bulls are like, nah, we're going to just trade you. We're going to just trade you. You're a little bit older now. Mm-hmm. You've been playing baseball. You haven't touched a basketball. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't know. And maybe we win a championship and all is forgiven. And then I'll be back on board. But I'm definitely going to be tuned in this week to see what it looks like. AD's probably not playing tomorrow, but he's supposed to play Saturday.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another thing that's in modern things that happened last week. Do you watch the Grammys, or do you watch
year.
Every year? I didn't know if maybe that was something you tuned into. Mm-hmm. So I stopped watching award shows like this at like the VMAs. I remember specifically the year. It was 2010, and I'm 40 now. But back then, even then, I was 7 years removed from high school, and I'm like, I don't get this. Like,
I don't ever watch the VMAs.
So, but then I tuned in a little bit because I figured you might want to talk about it a little bit.
I usually watch the Grammys just for their performances. And like, there's some crazy performances I don't like, but like, I think back to, so the Grammys, like days after Whitney Houston died.
Yeah.
Bruno did one of his best sets, Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
I'm a Bruno Mars fan. So I think about that one. There are Grammy.
You said you are a fan?
Yes.
Have you listened to his new song?
Which one?
The newest one that just
he has a whole new album
with Red, Sexy Red.
They're all duets.
Holy cow, that is extremely inappropriate.
Yeah.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it. Not on your work computer.
Yeah. But I have Grammy performances that I remember. So
Yeah, I can't relate. Like when Jaden Smith comes out and he's got a house on his head.
care about any of that.
I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
he's also not winning anything. So
No, and I don't understand why Beyonce won country album of the year. Did you listen to that album?
Grammy people doing Grammy things.
There you go.
Now I wanted Lainey Wilson to win, but
Or Chris Stapleton. That was a fantastic album.
that was a good album. Those are the two that I think you can still call country music. But there's some other ones up there with Beyonce nominated for country album that are not much different than what Beyonce did. And I think they gave Beyonce a lot of credit for crossing over. And I think they liked that she broke Taylor Swift's record, winning hers. Because Taylor Swift, if she won, would have broken her own record. So
I don't know. It's just weird to me because it's not country music.
yeah. And I have a little bit of a connection because with Lainey Wilson's album Wildflowers, when I was in Nashville back in October, the partner there that kind of took us around and showed us town when we weren't working during the day, in the evenings took us to a couple writers rounds for songwriters. And the girl who wrote a ton of Lainey Wilson songs, the ones, Heart Like a Truck, the Wild Horses one, she was there singing a lot of those and talking about the stories behind writing those songs, and it's pretty good. So
Yeah, that's a cool
her name's
experience.
Tranny Anderson, and then her and Jacob Rice and another guy, Isaacs, I forget his first name, were there, and they've written, like, you don't know who these people are,
Yeah.
but the songs they've written, all those songs.
Yeah. It's kind of like Hardy and Ernest and Morgan Wallen. They all came up as writers and now are becoming
Right.
popular singers.
So that was really cool. So I got to hear some of the stories behind that, which made me more of a fan of that Lainey Wilson album. So I would have liked to see her win. That's who I was pulling for. But I knew it was going to go to Beyonce.
Ugh.
They're going to give the crossover artist the credit on that.
Ugh. That's how I think about that. Just not a fan of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge Jelly Roll fan, but I don't he's not necessarily, he's more of like a country rock or country rap.
Yeah.
And I love Jelly Roll. We went to his concert. It was one of the best experiences of my life. But it's not country music. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
So much music that, Beyonce said something in her acceptance speech that I tend to agree with a little bit. She said, I think genre kind of tries to keep us in a box or something similar to that. And I don't mind it, but even with country music today, I guess why I'm less mad about Beyonce winning that award is because country music is so different today. Now there still are people like Lainey Wilson, like Chris Stapleton.
Who's the new guy that's supposed to be Alan Jackson's son? You know what I'm talking about?
But I will go back and I have an entire playlist of Texas country. I have an entire playlist of 90s country. And so I kind of subdivide the genres.
Okay,
and so
that's fair.
I'm not trying for country music today to be what country music was in the 90s for me.
Okay. That's fair.
So it doesn't bother me as much because of that.
Okay.
And those guys, George came out with an album a couple of years back, but they're really not recording anything new anymore. And the stuff they are recording new actually isn't that great.
Some of the stuff that these country guys are putting out is really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And there's a guy, like you say, and it might be him, that sounds a lot like Alan Jackson and has that look. And I'm like, I like that, but it's still not the same for me.
I need to look it up.
You write a song in the style of like an Alan Jackson or George or Clinton Black or something, and Brooks and Dunn, it's still not going to have the same vibe for me that I like as actual 90s country. You can't come in 2025 and write that song and replace that playlist and the songs on that playlist.
Yeah, it's not on the bottom. It's not a quick find.
There are definitely people out there still writing country music in that style and that genre, but it's never going to rise to the level of me of those actual 90s country artists.
That's fair.
So
at some point,
but I do watch the Grammys every year.
I have to tell my Joe Diffie story at some point. Today is not the day for that.
That's another
story.
one. Oh man, that's some good stuff.
So let's go in order of events from the last week. So the confirmation hearings happened. My first point of talking, and I put it on there, is I don't like it when adults yell at each other. Like, it doesn't come off as well, and especially whenever you have a senator who's supposed to be holding themselves to a higher standard. And we've seen it in all of them. The Patel one was pretty volatile. Gabbert got pretty volatile. I felt like Gabbert never lost her cool. I felt like Patel never lost his cool. RFK struggled.
Yeah.
And have we talked about that one? I can't remember the order.
No, he was this week.
And so, like, I think that, there's still a couple that are open. What does the PM mean?
So that's Polymarket. I put the Polymarket odds
gotcha.
on there of them to actually be confirmed, which I think RFK is high because Bill Cassidy out of Louisiana said he's not going to vote for him. So if he loses Murkowski and Collins, which likely will, that's the three. So you can't lose any more. So Cassidy's a no vote. Murkowski and Collins are no votes on RFK. So that's the only three you can have. That brings in J.D. Vance for the tiebreaker again, because he's not going to get any Democrat votes. But I was surprised
didn't Fetterman say he would vote for him?
I didn't see that.
Okay, maybe I misread.
But I was just surprised that Polymarket has him at 83%, because Polymarket's pretty dang accurate. And so what that translates to is you could, if you think no, you could go bet 4 cents to win $1. That's what the odds are right now.
Really?
Or you'd have to bet.
Ooh.
If you have to bet 90.
Those are pretty good odds.
For a no vote.
For a no vote.
For a yes vote, you have to bet 98 cents to win $1.
Ooh.
So you win 2 cents.
Yeah, I would go for the no. We may be becoming.
Don't start.
We may be becoming.
Listen, sports is one thing. Don't start betting on politics.
I don't think there's an app for that either.
There is. That's what Polymarket is.
Oh, Polymarket is a gambling app.
It is. It's
for. No, you shouldn't have told me that.
It's for predictions. And so they called the election for Trump like way before. But it is like Vegas, heavily influenced on the money going to these different. So if you put a bunch of money on one side, it's going to push the odds. But yeah, so Pam Bondi's at 100%. So I guess they just know they've got the votes, but they haven't had that vote yet.
Refresh my memory on which one Bondi is doing.
AG.
Okay.
Tulsi's 92, RFK's 83, and Kash Patel is 95.
She's a little higher than I would expect it to be.
I know. Well, honestly, I think if you say pick one of these, it's not going to make it. I think it's RFK.
100%. Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't think it's Tulsi. I think Tulsi's right after that, and then I think Kash, and I think Pam Bondi's it.
I was really impressed with Kash Patel. I didn't expect him to perform as. I mean, I don't know the guy personally. You know what I mean? I haven't seen him. I haven't watched a ton of interviews with him. You see him in the background of things over the past couple of years.
Let's do a couple podcasts with him. He's well informed.
Well informed.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I find very interesting is he did not back down. Mm-mm. He did not, and he said, I got called some awful things. Mm-hmm. So let's not talk about that. And yet they forced him to, and I felt the same way about Tulsi. I felt like she kept herself in check, kept herself very calm and collective. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't like it when adults yell at each other, especially when they're supposed to be respecting each other. And they're both she's, regardless of your role right now, she's a former military veteran.
Yes.
So you have, and that's the other thing I don't really understand.
She's still currently serving.
And if that person was your equal at one point, don't you have a little more respect for the position that she held? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I get confused. It's like, guys, she was your contemporary at one point. So regardless of you have to have some respect for that. Now I understand when they're interviewing a person like RFK who doesn't have the political backing that those other two have, like Patel and Tulsi have. I didn't really tune in too much to Bondi's because I figured that one wasn't going to be near as volatile.
It had its moments, but she is just so dang good at her job. It's hard for anyone to make a case like, no, you can't be the AG.
Yeah.
And she's been the AG of a large state. So.
And I think, too, it's going to be, if RFK doesn't get it, we're going to see something else. Somebody else is going to have to step into that role.
If RFK doesn't get it, I think Trump's going to put someone in there who's more or less a puppet. And he's still going to direct the administration to do what he wants it to do.
Correct. And I think, too, RFK, this is going to sound contrary to what I may have said in the past, but he's almost too anti-vax.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, he's almost so far opposite of what the country has seen thus far over the last 20 years.
Did you hear Rand Paul's little Discord?
Yes, but go ahead.
His 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
You want to play it?
Do you have it?
I've got it.
Yeah, play it.
All right, let me grab it.
Oversimplified and dumbed down that we never really get to real truths. And it's why people up here are so separated from real people at home. So we talk about hepatitis B. It's a terrible disease. It could lead to liver failure, as the chairman said. But the reason you have distrust from people at home, why they don't believe anything you say, they don't believe government at all, is you're telling my kid to take a hepatitis B vaccine when he's 1 day old. You get it through drug use and sexually transmitted. That's how you get hepatitis B. But you're telling me my kid has to take it at 1 day old. You're not. That's not science. And so every person with a bit of common sense, even people who don't resist vaccines, I vaccinated all my kids. I believe vaccines are one of the modern miracles beyond all pale. The Speckled Monster is a great book about the introduction of the smallpox vaccine in 1720 into our country. All miracles. But I'm not a one-size-fits-all. It's not all or nothing. I chose to wait on my hepatitis B vaccine, and we did it when they went to school. Does that make me an awful person? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer because I questioned the government dictate of whether I do it? And I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But for goodness sakes, let's have an honest debate about these things. The COVID vaccine. If you ask me my opinion, the reporters run up and down the hall and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine, and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID. Look it up. No healthy child died from COVID. And so the thing is that it's 1,000-fold greater. So if you ask me my advice as a physician, if you were 65 or older or overweight and some other conditions, I would have said, hell yes, I'd take the COVID vaccine. The risks of the disease were real and much greater than the vaccine. But if you ask me, should my healthy 6-month-old get it? See, these are the nuances you're unwilling to talk about because there's such a belief in submission. Submit to the government. Do what you're told. There is no discussion. There ought to be a debate. You're not going to let him have the debate because you're just going to criticize and say, it is this and admit to it or we're not going to appoint you. But it's more complicated than that. And this is why people distrust government.
So you have several children. I have several children. We are no longer having newborn children. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't know if you guys are.
Never again.
Okay, so let's establish that we both have kids. We both have been through the process of vaccinating our children. My kids are fully vaccinated. Okay, when we went to the doctor and they gave us the opportunity to take the COVID vaccine, mm-hmm. I declined. I really don't know why I did in the moment. It just didn't feel right, mm-hmm. and I can't really describe why or what. I had COVID, so therefore I was like, well, I mean, they were in the house when I had it. I mean, there's nothing I could do to stop it. I mean, where kids are pretty healthy and so on and so forth. But I think the amount of vaccines that are given to kids just seems like a lot.
72.
It seems like a lot. And
and someone else was saying, like, here's the thing. The school mandates it. And so if you can get a vaccine, if you're a pharmaceutical company who can get a vaccine on this list that's required by the school, it's $1 billion a year to your company. So what do we do about what are pharmaceutical companies trying to do?
Yeah, they're trying to
get
put them on there.
Vaccines, which money's changing hands for the people who are making those decisions. And you can't just sit back as a parent, and this is exactly what Rand Paul's talking about. We'll play the rest of the clip, but you can't just sit back as a parent and say, well, school says you got to have it. Well, the government says you got to have it, so I got to have it. You know, you got to think about, pull the curtain back a little bit, look at the man behind the machine and the Wizard of Oz a little bit and say, wait a second. 72 vaccines, and 1989, in the year they started requiring it, is when you begin seeing all of these issues with kids that start happening with childhood diseases.
Well, and two, like, just because you question something doesn't mean you're going to say
exactly
no.
Right. My whole point about this video, and I meant to post this on my socials, and I just didn't get around to it, but I will, and we can post it on our page as well, is what you hear Rand Paul saying, and even at the end, Bill Cassidy saying, who disagrees with Rand Paul in this, even though they're from the same party. What you see here is what the political discourse should be like. You should be able to question and talk and discuss these things in an open forum and not be canceled just because your idea is a little different. Because if you're just coming at it without any support or without any ideas, like I just don't like this because I don't like this, okay, I'm going to think less of your opinion. But if you have some thought behind it and say, for me and my family, this is how we think, this is how we feel, and look at this, and we're kind of looking at this, I'll be like, okay, you've thought this out, you're making a decision for yourself, and that is your prerogative.
So if someone told you 5 years ago, I'm not giving my kids a vaccine, do you remember ever having that exchange with someone? Because I do. I remember.
I knew people who didn't, but I'm not an actual exchange talking with them.
No. So, but now it's becoming more. And whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. It's the government's fault. Mm-hmm. It's Anthony Fauci's fault.
They don't trust.
I don't trust them.
Right.
And that's not that. Again, it's not saying that I'm never gonna. If we get to the point where I have to give my kids another vaccine, mm-hmm. we don't even do the flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm. It never works.
It doesn't work for our family.
Yeah.
And like the last time I was sick and I thought I was dying, Clint, I had the flu vaccine. I got the flu shot and I thought, man, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
Because I had like 105 fever. I ended up getting flu A, flu B, strep, and double ear infections as a 38-year-old.
Yep.
And it just like that's 100% coincidence. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, man, I'm awfully hesitant.
That's the thing. Like the times I've gotten the flu shot and gotten sick from it, the actual flu wasn't that bad. You know, it's like I think I'll just take the regular old flu. Like,
and maybe as I get older, like
yeah,
you see the shingles vaccine. Have you seen that? If you had chickenpox, you're supposed to take the shingles vaccine once you get to 55 or whatever. I definitely will take that because shingles runs in my family. You know,
and that's and we can play the rest of this, but that's what Rand Paul is talking about is. You know, you make that decision based on, but you're not a bad person if you decide against it. Like you're making a health decision for yourself.
Correct.
And time and history have shown us that what they've told us we need and what's healthy for us is not always the case.
Correct. Go ahead and finish it.
Because you're unwilling to have these conversations. And go home, ask your Democrat young mothers, your Republican young mothers, if they're vaccinating their kid for hepatitis B, and they're like, well, do I have to do it on day one? It's this precious little baby. Is there science to say you shouldn't do it? Probably not, but it's my kid. You know, it's like there isn't clear-cut science saying not to. But on autism, there's no good science of anything to show what causes autism. We don't know. It's a profound disease. I know many moms here and dads who have kids with autism. I know them personally. I've met their kids. But the thing is they saw their kids developing completely normal, maybe speaking 100 words go to no words at about 15 months of age. Now, there isn't proof. There isn't proof that the vaccines cause it. That's true. There isn't proof that it causes it. But we don't know what causes it yet, so shouldn't we be at least open-minded? We take 72 vaccines. Could it be? I don't know. But we shouldn't just close the door and say we're no longer, because we believe so much in submission, we're not going to have an open mind to study these things. And so it's sort of this crazy notion. Schizophrenia, I would put in the same notion. You have a kid who's completely normal to 18 or 19, and their brain goes haywire. How does that happen? It's the most bizarre disease. Shouldn't we be open? Could it be our food? It might be vaccines. It might be our food, but autism's more common. I don't know about the schizophrenia statistics, but autism is more common. Shouldn't we want to be open-minded? Instead, we're so close-minded and we're so consensus-driven that the science says this. Well, science doesn't say anything. Science is a dispute, and 10 years from now, we could all be wrong. We were told in the beginning, 20 years ago, they did this enormous study, and they said, everybody over 50 should take an aspirin. I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. It makes sense. But you know what? 20 years later, they measured it. And they found if you had no heart disease and you were taking aspirin, your chance of dying from a brain bleed or from a stomach bleed were greater than the risk of heart disease. If you have heart disease, they still say take an aspirin. If you don't, they've changed their mind 20 years later. But would you have all said I was crazy and I should no longer be in public discourse if I had said 20 years ago, I don't feel like taking an aspirin. I ride my bike all the time. I'm afraid I might hit my head. But that's what country's about. It's what dissent is about. So just ask you to look at the larger picture and give the guy a break who says, I just want to follow the science where it leads without presupposition. I think really what we have up here is presupposition. You've already concluded. It's absolute that autism isn't caused by it. We don't know what causes autism, so we should be more humble in what we say. Sorry I didn't get to a question.
For the record, if a child is born to a hepatitis B mother, that child may have a 95% chance of becoming a chronic carrier. But if the
And we
child,
vaccinate those people, and nobody's against that.
But if the child-
that's a very small percentage and
I
a
just
red
may
herring.
finish.
That is not what we're talking about. 99.9% of kids don't have a hepatitis B, Mom. And could they wait a while? Could they get vaccinated 3 months or a year? Yes.
so again, for the record, if the mother's hepatitis B status is known, then that can be delayed. The problem is oftentimes, or at least a significant percentage of the time, the mother's status is not known. If she's hepatitis B positive, a vaccine on day one of life prevents chronic hepatitis B 95% of the time. So it really depends upon the knowledge of the mother's hepatitis B status. And when they used to do just, okay, we know the mother's status or not, there's mothers that snuck through. Their status was unknown. We can blame the OBs, yeah, Marshall. But for the record, there is an absolute rationale for that. But you're right. If the mother's status is definitively known, that it can be safely delayed. So now, Senator Murray.
So there at the end, that was Bill Cassidy. He is a Republican. He disagrees with Rand Paul, another Republican, about this. But he at least at the very end said, you're right. If the mother's status is definitively known, they can and maybe should delay that vaccine. And that's what I mean by that's how political discourse is supposed to happen. You have two guys who actually disagree with each other. And like I said, Bill Cassidy's come out and said he's not going to vote for RFK. And of course, Rand Paul is. He just flat out said you should give the guy the benefit of the doubt and not cancel him just because he's going to question things and ask questions about the science. But these two guys found a point they agreed on and they disagree on every other point, but they had a discussion about it. Like that is, like you talked about, you don't like people yelling at each other in these confirmation hearings.
Right.
That's what I wish it all sounded like.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I wish it all sounded like. We were just talking to anybody on the street about how we feel about politics. But
I think too, like we haven't, you and I have been, this is what, episode 15.
It is.
We haven't had a very big disagreement. There have been things that you're a little bit this way, I'm a little bit that way, but we haven't had a big disagreement.
yeah,
If and when that happens, excuse me, if and when that happens, I hope that we can have that style of conversation. But why have we gotten to the point that it's okay to scream at each other? That's what I worry about, honestly. Like that's something that really concerns me about society.
yeah.
Because like Elizabeth Warren and then Bernie Sanders yelling at RFK and then RFK saying, well, Bernie, you took $1.5 million from the pharmaceutical company. Well, that was for a campaign. Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah, he called him a liar at first, and then he backed off and said, well, no, that was from all individuals. Okay. It was still all individuals tied to the pharmaceutical industry. So, call a spade, man.
Yeah. And again, it is what it is. And I think that kind of wrapping this part of it up, I think we both think that Tulsi's going to get it, Bondi's going to get it, and Patel's going to get it. The problem is going to be RFK. I'm not sure. I'm 50-50.
Yeah, but I hope he does.
I hope he does too.
I really hope he does. And I feel like if everyone just listens to what Rand Paul just said there, a doctor, and it wasn't like you should, like Rand Paul said nothing about you should vote for RFK because he's Trump's man and Trump won. Nothing about that. Nothing about mandates, elections, nothing. All he said was, don't knock the guy for questioning the science, because I just gave you a couple examples where the science has been wrong.
And also, we cannot forget both Tulsi and RFK are former Democrats.
Yeah.
So why in the world are the Democratic Party going against them?
Oh, I think there's more reason for them to go against him because of that.
Yeah, and well, but they're
Because
still
they-
there
because they-
though, right?
because they
They're still,
flipped.
but that's politics. I think
Yeah.
that's politics. So are they going to go after Fetterman if he flips?
He said he wouldn't.
He also still wears a hoodie into the congressional halls.
Yeah, he's pretty set in his way.
But again, he seems to be, I can't believe I'm going to say this, he seems to be having reasonable conversations with people.
That's what I mean. Yeah, he can sit down. I mean, he was on The View. He was on Rogan. Both of those are two totally different environments, right? You're going to sit down with Whoopi Goldberg versus sitting down with Joe Rogan. And he has a good discussion in both forums.
Yeah.
Like, knock the guy. He does not look professional.
No.
And many times he doesn't even speak that professionally.
No.
He kind of speaks off the cuff. You see him being very much a man of the people as that type of politician.
Correct.
And he wears the hoodies and shorts, like even to the inauguration. But he can speak in both of those forums, get his points across, listen, be heard. And that says a lot for a guy, regardless of what he wears.
And I think in leadership, that is probably the biggest quality that we're missing is people don't listen. Like you're listening to speak rather listening to hear.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue we have in all leaders, not just in politics. Like you're trying to figure out what you're going to say rather than just listening to what is being spoken to you.
But here's the thing. If Cassidy is a no vote, RFK might not make it out of committee.
Yeah, that's true.
If all the Democrats vote no. Now, in the past, the Democrats have went ahead and voted yes to get him out of committee, but then voted no in the actual vote. So I don't know, but I do think he's in more trouble than our betting market says he is.
There was also a couple of tragedies this week.
Big one.
With the Black Hawk crashing into a commercial airliner.
I'm so glad that happened after we recorded, because the story has developed. You talked about this a week or two ago and said, sometimes I'm glad when we can take some time and we only record once a week. Because if you're somebody who records every day and you got to hit that topic, like,
That's a tough topic.
I think as long as you approach it from, we don't know everything yet and we're going to find out more, that's okay. But if you're the guy, and what I'm getting at is a very tangible point. At the very beginning, in the first couple of days, I was like, man, either it wasn't in my feed or it wasn't happening. I'm really glad I'm not seeing all the conspiracy theories. Now that's changed.
Right.
Now you're seeing all that come through.
Right.
And I'm like, because I thought as soon as it happened, I'm like, people are immediately going to say this is planned. It happened on purpose. But it's like, why?
Have you ever flown into that airport?
Yes, several times.
So me too. And that if anybody's ever flown into that airport, let me kind of give you a visual of what it looks like. You literally fly down the Potomac River, and you're close enough to the ground to where you can see the ground, and it's like, we're kind of low.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go up, you do a bend, and then you kind of come back into the airport to land. And you can literally see the Jefferson Memorial, you can see the White House, you can see, it's a perfect image of Washington, D.C. Like, it's perfect. And it's my understanding that Andrews Air Force Base is just north.
It's in Virginia. It's actually
it's a little further southeast
yeah,
of this location. And I vividly remember when we were flying in there a couple of years ago for a funeral. There were helicopters in the air, and there were a lot of them in the air. And I don't remember
see helicopters in DC.
Yeah, and so it's my understanding that from what I've read is that this was a normal training procedure. The problem is the helicopter was at like 300 or 400 feet, and they're supposed to be at 250, no higher than 3.
I think there's a lot aviation wise. I've flown airplanes. I had my pilot's lessons when I was younger. Much smaller airplanes, but they're not like a commercial airline pilot or anything at all like that. But I have flown into Reagan a few times, have landed an airplane on a runway. That's my experience. I think it's crazy, and I've never seen this before. Like, you see helicopters all over DC all the time. There's police helicopters circling the Capitol.
Correct.
24/7.
Correct.
There's always a helicopter in the air looking around. I did not realize it was a normal flight path for any helicopter to fly across the approach of Reagan,
of a landing
DCA. Yeah,
correct, of a landing airplane.
Even if that normal approach is 200 feet and the planes coming above you are at 400, I don't care.
Seems close.
That's too close. I mean, in fact, your TCAS system is within 1,000 feet up or down. So like the collision avoidance system. What's the first one stand for? Traffic collision avoidance system. So like only big airplanes and only commercial airplanes and military craft have TCAS, where it alerts them up to like 6 or 9, I forget, nautical miles out. If the computers are telling you the trajectory you're on, the trajectory they're on has a collision point within 1,000 feet, up or down, plus or minus. And we're talking about it was 200 feet, and we're okay with that. So I think that should just flat out change.
If that was the case,
Right. Everyone talks about if like at the beginning they were saying, could the pilot of the jet, the CRJ, try to avoid. I'm going to tell you something. Unless you've ever flown an airplane, you can't see underneath you.
yeah, you can only see out straight.
Yeah, and
He may not even have known it was there.
And you're in a left bank because you're
Yeah.
coming in that hard turn because you can't fly over anything.
Correct.
So that's why, they normally don't land the passenger aircraft on that runway. But if I have landed on it once and you notice that one,
Yep.
because you take like a 50-degree bank
Yes, you
to
do.
come around that corner
And you
land
feel
there.
it when you're in the air.
And you're landing fast. If you've
Yes.
flown a lot of times, you feel like, oh yeah, we're going a little quicker than normal. So you land faster. You have a steep bank that you come around. Like if you're in a steep left-hand turn to line up for short final, you're not going to see an aircraft coming in from your right side. And I don't know. My thing is like, how the heck did the Black Hawk not see it? Because the thing had landing lights on. Like I can understand, I guess, if it's dark and you just have your navigation lights, but you're a pilot, you're trained to look for that.
Correct.
But your landing lights are on at that point. Those are bright. Now they're only facing forward, but they're bright. I heard something about, they're equipped with night vision. So
Maybe they were blinded.
could have been blinded.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that.
I heard one Black Hawk helicopter pilot say that has flown that route. Normally you pull your night vision off when you come through there because it is much brighter and it can really mess with you. But my main issue is this, and this goes along with having a normal helicopter flight path to be in the same path perpendicular to a landing approach. I understand the helicopters were flying that training mission.
Can you hold on just a second? Was the flight path in the center of the river, or to the left or to the right? Because if I remember correctly, if it's more to the right, you're closer to the airport, right? If you're going this direction, it seems like the airport was here, and if they were further to the right,
They come
Could
in.
that
They
have-
come in to the right and to the left,
okay,
across the Potomac. They come in on the right side. If you're facing north, they come in on the east side of the Potomac, cross the Potomac, fly over the Potomac for a second, and then they land because the airport's right
on the Potomac.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it possible that they were too close to the landing strip rather than in the center of the river where they're supposed to be?
No, the airplane was right where it was supposed to be.
I'm talking about the helicopter.
Helicopter. I don't know.
Theoretically,
Could have been.
could have been.
If they would have been
Just a thought I had.
If they would have been further south, the airplane would have been at a higher altitude. If they came in too close to the threshold of the runway, then of course the airplane's at a lower altitude.
Gotcha.
But they were also supposed to
That
be,
makes sense.
Yeah. So I could see it like, yeah, you can fly across that path if you're all the way down in Virginia,
Right.
or further south into Virginia, because the airplane is still going to be at 2,000 or 3,000 feet.
Correct.
Coming in at that time.
Yeah.
But my point is, like, they said this is a normal training mission that they need to fly in urban, not
Correct.
only urban environments,
Yeah.
but also DC.
Correct.
Because these Army helicopter pilots in an emergency attack on the government need to protect the seat of government.
Correct.
So they need to fly missions in Washington, D.C. because that is our seat of government that our Army and other armed forces protect. My problem is you have brought innocent civilians into the theater of war training by saying we need you to be able to fly this path across Reagan because you may have to fly it because the Pentagon's right on the other side.
Correct.
You may have to dispatch from this fort, starts with a B. What was it?
Bliss. Is it
No,
Bliss?
it's not
No.
Bliss. It's something.
I
don't
can
know.
see it on my
Anyway,
map.
It's an Army fort that this helicopter took off from, and they need to be able to get to the Pentagon in an emergency. So this is how they fly. The problem is you've brought innocent Americans and non-Americans and innocent civilians into your training for war. Like you brought them in and you put them in potential danger so you can train for this scenario. And like, I don't know how you train real time for that scenario without doing that, but I don't think you should be doing that. Because if you have a pilot who makes a mistake in this case, it's not And it's sad anytime any soldier loses their life. But it's worse to me when a soldier's flying a training mission and they have a mishap and a mistake happens and they lose their life. That happens. There is not a high expectation of that. A parent, a husband, a wife who has their spouse or their child in the Army who's stationed stateside probably feels pretty comfortable that they're not going to lose their life in that role.
Right.
But it does still happen sometimes on the training mission. But the problem is when you brought innocent civilians into that training theater and put them in harm's way so you could train for your mission.
Yeah.
That's something I think that needs to be addressed. I don't have the answer for it, but I think that's something Pete Hegseth and DOD
Have to look at
need
at least.
to address. If they are putting innocent civilians in danger in order to train for a mission.
I want to be clear too. A lot of the perspective, or what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of the message that was being sent was, this is caused by DEI, and one of the pilots was a female pilot. This has nothing to do with that.
Can we just say, like we said on the very beginning, we voted for Trump, but we are certainly going to call him out when he does
This was a
something we don't
mistake
like.
on his part.
This is something he did I do not like. If I'm a parent, and that was
I
my
know
child
exactly
on
where
that
you're
plane,
going. Yeah.
If I'm a spouse and that was my wife on that plane, I do not want to hear the President of the United States get up at a podium and 30 seconds into his speech after the moment of silence start blaming a campaign promise
Correct.
on this.
We're-
Just drop it. That may have a place when you're having your conversations with Hegseth and the DOD.
Or even a week later.
And the FAA in those conversations. But when the president comes in for a press conference, which is rare, when he comes and stands behind that podium instead of the press secretary and he's addressing the country after a national tragedy, I don't want to hear that crap. And that was a mistake. And almost appeared like he tried to take a victory lap on the "See, I told you so."
Yeah.
And there was zero place for that.
Yeah, that was the first one so far.
Yeah.
That I've really
I will
felt
say
like
that, yeah.
he should not have done that. And that's a mishap on him. He hasn't done it again. Have you caught that?
No.
Yeah, he hasn't done that again. And I can't help but, because in the past he would have.
Would have doubled down.
He would have doubled down on it. And I can't help but wonder if his the White House, not the press secretary, but the White House lady, what's her name? Grandma White House.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Susie
about?
Wiles.
Susie Wiles came in and was like, "Hey
Chief of
man, you
Staff.
can't do that. The chief of staff you can't do that. That's a low blow." And he didn't double down.
Yeah.
And so I think there's no conspiracy in my mind. I mean, could theoretically there have been, like, I saw some guy on some deep dive I did on YouTube, that you're up at late at night, and I'm like, I wonder what happened. And this guy's like, well, they can take control of those things and remotely fly them.
They can, but
sure they can.
Here's my question for any person who says there's a conspiracy anywhere. Why? What if someone did that? Okay. First of all, 70 people on board, 60 people on
And
board,
like 10 of them were hunters.
a regional jet.
Yeah.
And then you got a bunch of figure skaters.
Yeah. Hunters and figure skaters.
What's the point of that? Like, you're really sticking your neck out to pull something like that off.
Correct.
So, and then of course, when you say that, their response is always, well, they're just seeing if they can. And then next time it's going to be the
practice.
big one.
This is practice.
I really thought when I was like thinking everything for not having the conspiracy theories in the first couple of days, I was like, you know what? They're going to say somebody from Epstein's Black Book was on that plane. That's going to be the story.
Yeah.
That's all.
Not,
anytime something happens, it's always like, this person was connected to Epstein. They got Hillaried.
yeah.
They got suicided.
It's just a tragedy, and bad things happen to good people. And we can't accept that anymore.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we can't accept that.
For the topic we were just on, we're not crazy for thinking that. Just like you shouldn't cancel someone just because you're a sheep because you don't see what's really going on. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
And there doesn't seem to be any connection to anybody. I saw the flight manifest, and it was like,
That's what I mean.
And I feel bad for,
And even if they want to pin it on the one female on that Blackhawk, she was the commissioned officer.
correct.
She, 98% probably was not flying that aircraft. It was the warrant officer flying that aircraft,
Yeah.
not the command. That's just the. So come on, no.
Yeah, and we talked about. I thought it was. This is ironic only to us and on this podcast where we talked about earlier a couple of episodes ago about women in combat, and you were like, I think I don't have a problem with them in helicopters, and then I was like, oh.
Well,
Then we have
and that
a
came
helicopter
from that came from
accident.
that Taylor Sheridan show, Linus. But
But I just, it's just a terrible tragedy. And
Yeah.
then
and
my,
sometimes that's all it is.
yeah. And 90% of the time I feel like that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just a terrible tragedy. And man, it sucks. But you know what doesn't suck? Doge.
You're skipping Dan Patrick.
Okay.
You gonna wait? You gonna push it at the end?
I think so. Because I may go long winded in that. We may have to break it in. Okay. So
Hold fast for Dan Patrick.
yeah,
We're gonna jump to
We're going to
Doge.
jump to Doge. Oh, sorry. And I want to talk about the tariffs too, because that seems to be ever changing every minute. And again, another reason why I'm glad that we do this a week, only once a week.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Doge first. It seems like Doge is really shining light on the cockroaches of Washington D.C. I mean, I don't.
That's a good way to put it.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, have you looked?
Here they come running out of the cracks.
Yeah. Have you looked at the debt clock?
Yeah.
And now they've added the. I'll put this on our Facebook page, but they've added the debt clock in real time, so it's now 9:13, and right now the Doge clock has saved $54 billion since its inception, and I just
2 weeks in.
we're 2 weeks in,
Yeah.
and again we're still in $6 trillion in debt. So baby steps, billions and trillions is what we're discussing here, but. That in the long run, that's going to be helpful. Did you find anything that's come out so far that you found interesting? I have one that I found was interesting. The $600,000 sushi.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, first off,
That's what you're talking about.
yeah, like anything that's come out that they've shined light on that's like, why are we spending money on this? First off, I find it detestful that they have been paying any money at all to any terrorists. Okay. Mm-hmm. They also came out yesterday or the day before, I think it may have been Friday, about how the Treasury Department has never turned anyone down. Did you see that?
Yes.
And it's like, what?
Yeah, the workers said that.
What?
Yeah.
How is that? What?
They were instructed no.
No, like, okay, why?
Yeah.
And that's, again, this is why we need this department.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to scream into the microphone because it just makes me so mad. And like, I think as a teacher, I don't get paid enough for my job, and I do my job very well, and yet we're spending $600,000 on sushi. Now, I've had some good sushi in my time, okay, but how much does $600,000 worth of sushi? And then there was like in the six figures of coffee that was being sent to the Pentagon.
We talked about this last week. What was the number for the condoms in Gaza?
It was in the
It
millions.
was 50 million, wasn't it?
I think so.
And I think there's only 2 million people in Gaza.
That's a lot of
People.
condoms. It's a lot of condoms.
People. 2 million people.
And everybody knew, and if you did not think this, then you've had your head in the sand for the last 20 years. Everybody knew that there's frivolous spending in Washington.
Yeah.
One of the biggest contracts I got when I was working in the trucking industry was moving wings from this place around here to a place that wasn't too far from here. Okay, it was top secret, so I can't really talk too much about it. But we were moving specialty equipment from one place to another that was like 2 hours from each other. And this normal load would cost like $1,000 to move. And we charged $10,000, and there wasn't even a blink of an eye. Not even a blink. And this was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Let's go. Let's get it done. What? That's $15,000. Okay, wait, how many of these can we move in 3 weeks? You know what I mean? And so, like, I knew that this was happening, but just some of the stuff, and you see Elon Musk is even like, he even seems to be like
A little shocked by it.
A little shocked by something that he's pulling out. Is like, what in the heck? Like, how does this even happen?
He's the perfect guy to do this.
Yeah,
He really is. Like, you got to have somebody worth that much, the richest guy in the world, doing this,
correct.
because he's not phased. Like, he can't be bought with it. It's like he told whenever Disney didn't want to advertise on Twitter anymore. He's like, okay. Like, try to scare me with money. It's not going to work. And that was Disney.
He called Disney out on
Disney,
stage.
ESPN, ABC, a pretty large company.
Well, and I think too, it's important to understand that Doge is only going to be around another 500 and something days. I saw that today. It's only around another 500 days. Mm-hmm. There's a time limit to this, and people seem to be forgetting that. Like I see yesterday there was the Democratic National Convention or whatever they had yesterday, which is I don't even want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Where they're doing the Cupid's shuffle on the
they elected
screen.
their new DNC chair.
Yeah.
Did you see who got the vice chair?
No.
Hogg.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Parkland.
The boss hog. But anyways, I digress. I just think that everybody knew it was there. Everybody knows that the government spends frivolously, but as they continue to shine light on it more and more and more, it's like, what in the world?
I think where you're going with this, I am actually surprised. Some of it has surprised me. And I went into it saying I'm not going to be surprised by anything. But then you see some of it and you're like, that is a lot of money.
Yeah. Like the Lutheran one. I didn't see that. That was in the U.S. aid one. It was like a Lutheran thing, and I haven't fully developed an opinion on that yet because I haven't done enough research on it, but it's a lot of zeros at the end that they're receiving. A lot of, 6 or 8 zeros. And it's like, that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And we don't have any way of checking. Again, I don't want to put that one out there yet because I don't know 100% what that is or what that looks like. And it seems like there's going to be some more of those that come out. But man, it's a lot of money for condoms.
Yeah.
And I think that we've got to be better. And I don't know if he's going to actually be able to reverse the debt ceiling and reverse the debt clock. But if they can get $1 trillion off in a year, I think they're headed right down the right path. We're 2 weeks in, they're $54 billion.
Yep.
And there's going to be some cuts, and there's going to be some hurt, too. That leads us into the tariffs. Again, when we first started this podcast, we decided that we were going to do this once a week. Mm-hmm. If we had done this Thursday, when they first took effect, now it's Monday, and both Canada and Mexico have negotiated a 30-day.
It was even faster than that. They didn't take effect till Saturday. It was February 1st.
Correct.
So
no. He published them Thursday, right?
Yeah, right.
He published them Thursday. They were supposed to take effect on February the 1st. Not even 24 hours later, both Mexico,
imagine that,
and Canada were coming to the thing.
And now they're paused for 30 days because of
negotiations.
Mexico and Canada are like, we're not doing anything. We'll put our own tariffs on you, and everybody blows up. All the Trump haters blow up at this. Like, this is gonna be so horrible. It's so inflationary. All this blah blah blah. Now here we are, just 48 hours later, and all of a sudden, oh look, Canada and Mexico are going to do what we wanted them to do. Yeah. Look how it worked. Like this guy, like
Trudeau.
No, like Trump.
Okay.
Like nobody negotiates like he does.
No.
And he found a place, like it was a specific tariffs too.
Yeah.
On specific items. He found a place to push a button to get what he wanted that makes America better, makes America safer. That's the thing. Like, I understand if you want to complain about a 25% price increase on your avocados. I get it. If you like your avocados, that's cool. It's not just for fun. There is a problem at our southern border that needs to be addressed. So if you have to pay 25% more on your avocados, or if that means you eat fewer avocados, but our border gets safer and there's fewer drugs coming across the border, there is a benefit to this.
I don't even like tequila. I like Irish whiskey, so I'm good. I like Kentucky bourbon.
No, I should have got it. I mean, I guess I'll be drinking. Like here's the effect of the tariff for me. I'm going to drink Tito's, which is from Austin, Texas, more than Grey Goose.
Correct.
Coming out of Canada. So.
Correct. Well, and I think that it has. Okay, I haven't seen this anywhere, so this is an original thought that I have. That maybe it fabricated in my brain. I saw it some late night, and I just don't remember. But if I remember correctly, in the first 100 days, Biden shut down the Alaskan pipeline that went directly through Canada. Correct?
Yes.
Now, I did see something
for the caribou.
For the caribou. Okay, whatever. Regardless,
who actually liked it because it was kind of warm and it helped him out.
It helped him out. But that's beside the point of this conversation. It's just like the fish in California.
Here's the thing. Go Google search, or I can find the episode and put it in the show notes of Joe Rogan talking about the actual caribou, because Joe Rogan's a hunter, so he understands this, about the overpopulation of caribou now because they did that.
Yep.
and the problem that causes because they aren't being
They're not being
harvested.
managed. Correct. So we shut down that pipeline, okay, which hurts Canadians. It hurt the United States. And regardless of how I feel about that is beside this point. Okay, I did not know that Canada does not have a single refinery in its borders.
Yeah.
Not one. So Alberta came out and said, hey, we are not paying this tariff. We will send our, screw you, Trudeau. We are not doing that. But here's the problem. If you look at a map of Canada, all those pipelines come out of Alberta into the United States and then back up through Detroit up into eastern Canada. So how is Montreal and Toronto going to get their gasoline? Because Trudeau canceled the Eastern Pipeline.
That's what I mean. This all comes out after the fact.
Right,
Like we're learning.
right.
We're
We're learning
this.
it after.
Trump already knew.
He did know.
Yeah, he already knew, and he's like, "This is what we're going to do, and this is what they're going to do because of it." And guess what? The billionaire real estate mogul from New York was right. Art of the deal.
It seems that China is going to kind of steadfast. It seems like they're
Holding steady, and I got a couple thoughts on that, and I don't know which one it is. One, their economy is a little sluggish right now, so they're either holding steady to not put panic in their people. Because remember, China's government is different than our government.
correct.
They wait hand and over foot over what the government says because the government controls so much of their life. So if China's government,
Okay,
Xi
pause.
Jinping looks...
I found this out yesterday that Canada's media is state run.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not know that, and it's state run at each individual territory. So go ahead. So it's very similar to Chinese.
Right. And so if Xi Jinping comes out and he's all worried and throwing back threats back to Trump, it's going to worry his people. Then that's going to cause more unrest than they already have with their sluggish economy. That's one reason. I think that's the lesser of my two. So
What's your second one?
Save the best for last. I think that Xi Jinping is sitting back. So 20, 30 years ago, we were China's number one customer. China now is the number one trading partner of over 120 different countries across the world, in Africa and in Europe. I think, and again, I'm a guy sitting in North Texas. That's China. So I don't know. But I think maybe, what if he's sitting back thinking, Trump is pissing off the world with his tariffs. We can sit back and look pretty and look like a much better trading partner than the U.S. and cause these countries, we've already expanded our reach, to cause even more of them to increase their relationship with China, because China actually looks more stable right now than the U.S., who's barking about tariffs. Still don't disagree with the tariffs. I think they serve their purpose in this case. I think Trump is getting what he accomplished. And like we said a long time ago, I don't think tariffs were ever a long-term plan. I think they're a means to an end to achieve policy objectives. Some people disagree. Some people think tariffs are going to replace the income tax. I don't think that's going to happen. That's just me. I think they are a means to an end, a bargaining chip, a negotiating tool to achieve a means to an end. That's what you saw happen this weekend. I think that's what you're going to see in the future. And I think China is sitting back saying this may help us if we look more stable and more friendly to the rest of the world. That's my opinion.
So what if they put a 10% tariff on us and they just cancel out? Is that possible?
Well, the percentage would cancel, but you have to look at who's sending more stuff where. So
Gotcha.
That's where you get the trade deficit.
Okay. That makes sense.
And
That makes sense.
China sends a lot more stuff to us than we send to them.
Gotcha. So it would be an import tax versus an export tax.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And Panama bent the knee as well. Did you see they are not going to extend their reach? Imagine that. And I don't like...
But Rubio went down there and got that done.
Yeah.
And I like that guy.
Who, Rubio or
Yes,
the...
Rubio.
Well, here's another thing that we're forgetting, and we haven't talked about this in depth at all, but we keep hearing the Democrats talk about how Trump is anti-DEI, except for Patela's Indian. Mm-hmm. Tulsi is a woman.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio is a Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
We have a gay
Treasury Secretary.
Secretary.
The highest office any gay person has held in any government now, because the Treasury Secretary is one of the top 4.
And the first woman of the
Chief of staff.
chief of staff, a young woman who is the press secretary. What at what point can we stop pointing that arrow at him about the DEI? And I said this last episode, this staff, this cabinet looks much different than the group. I'm not talking about like merit for merit. I'm talking about if you just put these two groups of people up against each other, the one from Trump 1 to now 2.0 is very different.
Yeah.
Including the vice president.
Right. Well, DEI is just not the answer because it, similar to affirmative action, was not the answer before. It tries to say, well, you have to have this many minorities serving just on the flat out basis that they are minorities. Instead of, let's line everyone up, give everyone an equal shake. And it doesn't matter what they look like, what their gender is, as long as they can do the job and do the best job. Merit should stand out above all. But going after people and hiring them, like say you have 4 top candidates for a position, but the majority of the people in serving in that area right now are already non-minorities. DEI would say you have to hire a minority,
Right.
because you don't have enough right now.
Yeah,
There's a quota to meet, and like I said when we talked about this weeks ago, I have zero problem with looking at the board of directors of a company and they're all being white males and saying, is there an issue there of only bringing white men onto the board? There may not be. That just because that exists, just because a discrepancy exists between protected classes or minorities, doesn't mean that something has happened. But I think I'm okay with investigating it and taking a look.
Right.
Just like I talked about in banking with red line rules,
With
fair
loans,
lending,
correct?
fair lending
Okay.
rules, where the government regulators will come in and take a look and say, all of your loan denials have all been to women. Well, okay, let me give you all the reasons for each one of these that you want to take a look at.
And that
as long
still
as-
cannot
as long
be
as
enough.
they're-
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, because it's the government. So that still, for banks, cannot be enough. They can still be cited, get DOJ referrals and law violations. But at the same time, I don't have a problem looking at it as long as it's going to be looked at objectively. And if you look at it objectively and say there was nothing wrong that happened here, each time someone was added on, that was the best person for the job for this reason, this reason, this reason, then because, hiring someone just because they meet a particular quota isn't even fair to them. Because then everyone's saying, well, you got that job because of this. You didn't like that, did you?
Woo! That went all the way up the nose.
You got a full face.
Sorry.
But that's my point.
That's a great, and
That's how I feel about it.
it's a great point, and I think that the points about the DEI is so dumb to me, and I've never really understood it because it doesn't make sense in my brain. And I don't think we've beat a dead horse on this, but like I was not raised to look at that.
Yeah.
So like how can I be judged against that? So it's hard for me because I don't understand it.
And this doesn't absolve me from ever saying anything wrong, but I say all of that as the dad of 3 daughters and as the dad of 2 biracial children. Like, I want unlimited opportunities for them, and I want all of their opportunities to be on their merit. If one of my kids goes after a job and doesn't get it because there's somebody else who studied harder, who learned harder, who has more experience, who's better qualified, I am 100% fine with that. I want them to learn from that. I don't want any of my kids to go get that job because their skin color is different or because they're female. I don't want that for them either.
Yeah, and because then they're not qualified, and then you have what happened with Mr. Washington, the former FFA.
Oh my gosh.
Not FFA,
You sent me
FAA.
a text that said, "Is this? It is real."
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
You should have heard, like the clip you sent me about Ted Cruz's interview. That went on and on and on. If you listen to the whole thing, like he didn't even know some of the major systems, like we talked about. I believe Ted Cruz asked him about TCAS, that trend.
Yeah, he did.
The collision avoidance system.
That's the first time I'd ever heard of that.
He didn't know what it was.
He didn't know what it was.
And you're the FAA
supposed
director
to,
who's going to oversee all of air traffic
Correct.
controllers
Yes.
who keep airplanes from running into each other.
Yes.
And you don't even know what it is.
Don't even know what it is. And it was 100% a
I don't expect
DEI
that.
hire.
It was 100%. And I don't expect that guy to have to sit behind a computer in a control tower and keep planes from running into each other, but I expect him to have some knowledge of what they do. Think about other industries, like where I work, where you work. Well, I don't know. You may have some bad examples, but in general, in 100% work.
I like the automatic pause.
Yeah.
Wait. You
Because
probably do have
you
some
probably
bad
have some bad
examples.
examples,
You
but
probably have some.
where I work, you don't get the job as audit partner unless you started down there as
Right.
an audit associate,
Right.
and an audit senior and manager, and like you come up through the ranks.
Correct.
That's how it works, and I think it should work that way in education. You should come up. You want everybody who's in administration to have teaching experience. That's probably actually not the case, but you want them to have experience doing the thing that they're going to be overseeing.
Correct. And
And like I
it's
said,
100% not the case, to be
It
clear.
is crazy, like that is okay.
It is what it is, brother.
Like, and that's 100% from my experience, because in the job that I do, that is just ridiculous. No one would be allowed. Like, no one's going to believe you or trust you. Like, if you haven't sat down and done an audit and done the grunt work of an audit and worked those 80-hour weeks, like, nobody's going to believe you when you're in charge.
Correct.
Where I work. And that may be the same case where you work,
gonna-
but you kind of have to.
I'm going to not comment on that, okay?
My wife's a teacher too. We all
Can I
know the
not
stories.
I'm going to not comment. No comment from the
You can comment
this
on it.
side.
We'll just cut it all out.
Yeah. That's a great okay. I want to give it its due diligence. So, are you going to watch the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Me too. I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I know. You too. I hate the Eagles. I hope they lose, except for I need Saquon to score a couple touchdowns. And I'll be good. I'll be good.
Yeah, I got to talk to you about our bets. There's some sleepers in there.
I know.
I'm excited. I'm gonna do a big one. I'm gonna do a Super Bowl big bet.
Okay, I'm
And
already.
when we
I've
come
already.
back
Hey,
next
I've
week,
already
I'm gonna
bet.
tell you
I've already bet a lot of money.
I lost on soccer.
Probably a good thing.
We should have talked about this at the beginning. I tried to do a soccer bet, and I really thought it was gonna hit. It did not. It didn't hit horribly too. It was horrible.
So I bet $15 on a Maverick game the other night, and won $80. So I hit on all 4 of my parlay, and it wasn't a flex. So I want to continue this conversation, but we probably need to wrap up and do a 2.0.
Yeah.
So have a great week.
You too, man.